In the village, the wolf has come, the wolf has come. Like people were like, okay, come on.
When the
Fine.
real wolf came, nobody listened.
Now, okay, if I ask you who Jesus is, then who Jesus is?
Why hasn't anybody found the stolen body? I can also claim to be the Messiah.
Exactly.
Real mark of the Messiah lies in whether the Messiah fulfills the prophecies concerning his birth, his life, his death. We need to make a big distinction between what is a myth and what is history. Why would anybody die for a lie? The Bible is the A-class book of history.
We have made it like Bible can be more reliable than
Yes.
the secular source.
Yes. It's okay to doubt with a desire to find the truth and get clarity.
Hi, hello, welcome everybody to yet another episode of Ripples. This is going to be very exciting and it is one of my favorite topics that we are going to cover. And today with me, I have Justin.
You would have seen me in the other video.
Yes. So today we are going to talk about the main man, Jesus Christ. And we are going to talk about what are the evidences and historical facts. And we're going to ask some questions, some hard questions, some skeptical questions that have been floating around the doubts that we also have. And further ado, let's jump into the episode. Hi, Dr. Charles. Thank you.
Call me Charles.
Yeah. Thank you so much for accepting this and letting us use your space for the interview. This thing, as our viewers know, this is like completely new for us, and everything is like new for us, and like approaching you and all of this thing, and we are hoping that we reach more audience by asking questions and discovering more truths and discovering more facts that are not commonly known to the audiences, and we're trying to push out what is true evidence based out there. So that is what we are trying in this podcast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
hope I'll be able to bring some value to the conversation. And thank you for doing this, Akash and Justin, and make this truly make ripples in the nation.
Man.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very excited about this topic particularly. So yeah, let's jump into the
Sure.
episode, and let me just so let's start with the main person.
Sure.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Let's start with
Go
Jesus
for it,
Christ.
yeah.
And who was he? Who's Jesus? What is it that floating out there, and what we can, when we say Jesus, what comes to our mind? Let's talk about that a little bit.
So first you have to tell me, are you asking this as a skeptic or are you asking this as a
Good
Christian? And what kind of a response? How should I pitch my response?
Like, out
So
of the blue, if Jesus Christ, if that's what is put in front of you, what do you like? Give it a personal opinion first, probably.
we can say it as a skeptic. Say suppose
initially.
I'm just throwing out question, like saying as if we are a skeptic, and we are saying like, okay, who is Jesus? Oh, we have a vague idea who Jesus is, but okay, if I ask you who Jesus is, then who Jesus is?
Right. The first thing I want to say about the person of Jesus is that he is not a myth.
Okay.
He is a person that is rooted in history. And when I say he is rooted in history, there are many secular historians that vouch for a literal flesh and blood Jesus that walked on the face of this earth some 2000 plus years ago. So Jesus, first of all, is a real person that lived through the annals of history. He's not a myth, he's not a ghost, he's not a phantom, he's not a mystic in that sense of being mysterious. He is a flesh and blood person. Now, as a Christian, we believe while he was 100% man, he was 100% God as well. That is why in Christian scholarship, you will hear the word incarnation. When they use the word incarnation, the technical term is en-sarke. Sarx means flesh, enfleshed. So imagine somebody putting on a cloak of flesh over them. So there is this God who's putting on a cloak of flesh. And so this 100% God becomes 100% man. And that's the person of Jesus Christ to me as a Bible believing Christian. But is he some mythological figure? No, he is not. He is absolutely rooted in history, flesh and blood, walked the face of the earth some 2000 plus years ago. So that's an opening statement, and you can ask me more.
Okay, okay. So that was so you're claiming that Jesus is a historical person,
Absolutely.
and if I'm about to ask you, saying that okay, if you're saying historical person and you're saying like it was written about people wrote about Jesus,
Mhm.
and what historic based on what evidences or based on what facts that you're making that claim that he's a historical person, because I could because it is written in a book.
Mhm.
It is written in a book. It's say suppose a Bible, and we read it and we know okay Jesus is a person, or
Right.
some other book it's Jesus is a person,
Mhm.
and I could say the same for like 100 years or 200. Say suppose we'll take 1,000 years from now. If I take the book Harry Potter, and if somebody claims that Harry Potter is true, and there might be people, some people who like believe okay Harry Potter is a true person and there's lived, like how do we differentiate, how do you use what's your perspective on
Okay, so before I even go to the Bible, let me appeal to extra biblical sources.
Hmm.
Yeah, so when I say extra biblical sources, I mean these are not people that are sympathizers with the Christian religion or the Christian faith.
Hmm.
Now, historically, the Christian faith was called as a quote unquote cult. So it was a religion where people saw it as a fallout from Judaism, a cult of Judaism, a cult that had to be squashed. So it is with that kind of a context and background, we need to look at the extra biblical sources. There are several that I can name, but Josephus is one. Josephus is a Jewish historian, and he is dated around 30 AD.
Okay.
That's when he was born.
Okay.
And Josephus writes Antiquities.
Hmm.
It's a very revered book of Jewish history. And in that book of Jewish history, Josephus is making reference not just to the historical person of Jesus, who is called as Christ. He's also making reference to the brother of Jesus, who is James. And so, by no means is Josephus a Christ sympathizer. He's a Jew. Jews
Okay.
were anti
Yeah.
this Christian cult.
Yeah.
So Josephus, an ace historian, is saying that Jesus existed and he had no axe to grind. There's more. Actually, there is another person named Tacitus. Tacitus is a Roman historian. He again refers to Jesus as a historic figure. Then Tacitus had a friend who was a Roman governor who's called Pliny the Younger. So Pliny also is a historian, and in his writings, he mentions Jesus called Christus. And there's another person named Mara Bar Serapion. He is a Syrian historian. None of these are Christian historians. So all of these are making reference to the person of Jesus, the group that Jesus started, the cult that Jesus started, the crucifixion of Jesus, and so on and so forth, independently of any Christian influence. And they had no axe to grind. They had no sympathies for the Christians. Christianity was a cult that was deserving of persecution. In the backdrop of all of that, there are many extra biblical sources that are clearly saying Jesus was a person that lived 2000 plus years ago on the face of this earth in flesh and blood. And so this is the first place to start.
No. So the documents that you say, I have this personal doubt is that, so you're saying Josephus made a claim.
Yes.
saying that he did this and he wrote.
He's
this.
written it in
He's
his work of history.
Yeah.
Called
So the
Antiquities.
piece of document that we have
Mhm.
right now, is it like, does it date back to the 30 AD, or like is it like
No.
further?
No,
like
it
what-
doesn't. It doesn't date back to 30 AD. I know where you're coming from. It's a very good question. So let me clarify, just for a context.
Hmm.
Now, if any work of history
Hmm.
in antiquity,
Hmm.
olden days, had to be confirmed as a work of antiquity,
Hmm.
there are at least three criteria that it has to fulfill.
Hmm.
Basic criteria. The
Hmm.
first criteria for a work of history to be deemed as a work of history
Hmm.
is, first, it has to pass what is called as the bibliographical test.
Okay. What is that?
Okay, so the bibliographical test says how many manuscript copies of that writing are there in circulation today.
Okay. Okay.
So if there are 100 manuscripts of
Okay.
what, let's say, Josephus wrote,
Okay.
okay, then the evidence for Josephus's writing to be regarded as authentic history
Hmm.
is, let's say,
Hmm.
respectable.
Okay.
If there are 1,000 copies of what Josephus wrote,
Hmm.
then the evidence is credible. If there are 10,000 copies of what Josephus wrote, the evidence is incredible. So the first one is, you look at the number of manuscripts that are available today that are surviving. They are called technically as extant manuscripts.
Okay.
Okay, surviving manuscripts of the original.
Hmm.
The more the number, the merrier.
Hmm.
So if you take the Bible
Hmm.
and demystify it and say, okay, this is for a moment not the word of God, as let's say Christians claim, but let's just try and send the Bible through the test of historicity, specifically the bibliographical test.
Okay.
If you ask me how many manuscript copies are there
Hmm.
for the Gospels, especially the New Testament writings, I would say there are at least 5,000 plus
Wow.
manuscripts that are surviving.
Hmm.
In the Greek, that's only in the Greek.
Oh, that's only in the Greek.
That's only in the Greek.
Wow.
If you're taking other languages, like
Hmm.
let's say the Latin Vulgate and so on and so forth, you have as many as 24,000 surviving manuscripts in the different libraries of the world that are preserved. And that's a modest figure.
Wow. So you're saying that is
25,000
the
is also
entire
a
New
figure that I'll
Testament.
push for.
Wow. Okay.
It's like a
So that's just the first test
Yeah.
of historicity.
Okay.
And the first part of the first test.
Yeah, let's go. Yes, I'm interested.
So the bibliographical test,
Yeah.
how many number of manuscript evidences are there? Okay, so the Bible
Yeah.
passes with flying colors.
Okay.
The second thing is, how close were these manuscripts to the original event? So you ask
Yeah.
me,
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
if Jesus died in 33 AD,
Yeah.
let's assume,
Yeah.
okay? Are there writings that speak about Jesus' death? Yes, there are writings. I'll say there are 5,000 writings. But the next question you have to ask me is, how close are these
Yes.
to Jesus' real death?
actual.
Okay.
Yes.
And so if I told you, oh, they are 1,000 years apart, then you'll be like, oh, 1,000 years is too long.
Yeah.
1,000 years, any legend could have developed. It could have been a myth. You know, it could be a fairy story. It
Yes.
could be a cock and bull story. And it could be like Chinese whispers.
Hmm.
But if I told you that all of the New Testament writings were written within about a span of 60 years of what actually happened. And the earliest ones that we have, a segment of John 17, is dated to as close to 35 years from the original occurrence of the event. So we are having only a 30-year gap.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Okay, here.
Yeah.
And if you take, for example, Homer's Iliad, from which we know the Greek civilization, or Caesar's Gallic Wars, from
Okay.
which we know about the Roman civilization, they are easily dating anywhere from 400 years to 1,000 years from the actual events that happened.
Oh. Okay.
Now, on one hand, we have the Gospels, which is as close as 30, 35 years. to a maximum of 60 years, all within the first 100 years,
Okay.
when the disciples, who were
Mm.
eyewitnesses,
Mm-hmm.
were perhaps living
Mm-hmm.
to challenge anybody that spread a wrong story about whatever they saw and felt and heard in real time as eyewitnesses. So the second test in the bibliography test is how close are these manuscripts to the actual event. And if you look at all of the other revered works of history in the world, from the Greek writings to the Roman writings, nothing comes anywhere as close to the Gospels. So I'm not here advancing the claim that the Bible is the Word of God. We'll come to that later. But I'm just trying to establish to you that of all of the history books in the world, the New Testament and the Gospels, to be in specific, are the ones that pass the bibliographical test with flying colors, unlike any other work of history.
Wow, that's
Okay, so that's just bibliography.
yeah.
Do you want me to go to the next one?
Yes,
Yes.
please.
The next two I'll give you quickly are the external evidence test and the internal evidence test. The external evidence test says that whatever is written in the Bible should have some corroboration or should have some recording outside of the Bible
Okay.
by non-Christian authors
Okay.
who had no sympathies towards this faith. And the list of 4 people that I gave,
Yeah, you just
right, from
mentioned.
Josephus to Lucian to Pliny the Younger and Marabar Serapion, were all Syrian and Roman and Jewish
Yeah.
historians. They had no sympathies for the Christian faith, which was cultic at that time. And all of them seem to be speaking about the person of Jesus and his historicity. They are speaking even about the darkness that shrouded the earth, which is recorded in the Gospels at the death of Jesus on the cross for 3 hours.
Oh, I didn't know
Somebody
that.
is calling it as an eclipse.
Oh,
Whether
okay.
it is an eclipse or not is a scientific question. But the fact that an eclipse brings darkness is attested by a secular historian, and it matches with what is written in the Bible. So the death of Jesus, the person of Jesus, Jesus, the founder of the cult, yeah, Jesus who is called as Christus, the anointed one, and the eclipse during the time of Jesus are all documented by external scholars who are secular historians. So the Bible passes the test of external evidence as well, very remarkably well. And you can go to archaeological finds for external evidence, like the pool of Siloam, okay, and the seat of Herod, the cylinder of Cyrus. All of these have been unearthed archaeologically, and they seem to be corroborating with what the Bible has been telling for hundreds of years, 1,000 years. So there are archaeological evidence, there are historical evidence. All of these are external pointers to the reliability of the Bible as a historic text.
Historic test.
The third one is, of course, the internal evidence. The internal evidence means the Bible has about 66 books. Yeah. And one book has to validate the other book. Or one truth in one part of the Bible should not fly in the face of another truth in another part of the Bible. Yeah. So there has to be internal consistency. And when you look at the Bible from cover to cover, from Genesis to Revelation, the golden thread of Jesus runs so beautifully and vividly right from the first pages of Genesis to the last page of Revelation, both of which are separated by about 1,500 years of authorship. There are 40 people that are writing the Bible, spread across 3 continents, writing in 3 different languages. All are separated by at least 1,500 years from the first writer to the last writer.
Wow.
You can imagine the number of generations. Today we speak of generation gap in 10 years, in 15 years, right? So there is 1,500 years of generation gap.
Wow.
And what the first guy writes in Genesis seems to be corroborating well and resonating well with what Matthew is writing in Matthew, with what John is writing in Revelation, 1,500 years apart. And not all of them were scholars, not all of them were academics or technical people. Some were shepherds, some were cupbearers to the king, some were just farmers, some were kings. All of them are writing, 40 different people. And if you piece it all together, the amount of synchrony that all of these 66 books hold is almost like a giant jigsaw puzzle. Let's say you went on a helicopter with 66 pieces, okay? And you went and spread around all of these 66 pieces in 3 different continents. And you did this project over 1,500 years, okay? And let's say you had a team that is coming after 1,500 years and piecing everything together. What are the odds that all of this 66 will fit in neatly without any contradiction and with so much of congruity, like a perfect jigsaw puzzle? And in that puzzle, you're able to see Jesus on the cross. Wouldn't that be fascinating? So, 3 tests: bibliographical test, internal evidence test, external evidence test, and the Bible passes with astounding level of historic reliability like no other work of history. Everything fades out and pales out in front of the Bible as a reliable work of history. I think we've gone too deep too early.
Yeah, no, but it's
Yeah.
It was
I
amazing.
mean, I don't know about. I'm really enjoying this because this is one thing that has been personally I've been thinking a lot. Because whenever I talk to people or whenever I even do my own study or anything, I'm not able to understand. I was not able to understand this concept, as in like what are the tests, what basis that I can say it is like true, or how can I even believe these kind of things, like you know, who wrote what.
Sure.
As you were mentioning, I had another question.
Sure.
You said from Genesis to Revelation, there's this connection of Jesus Christ. So, is there a possibility that Matthew, Mark, Luke, the people who wrote the gospel, uh, they were taking stuff from the Old Testament
Yes.
and then assuming it for Jesus Christ and applying it and creating a thread? Is there a possibility that they are creating a thread?
Okay. It is just possible, but you have to do a lot of, mental gymnastics to make that make that theory very viable. Yeah, it is a possibility. It is a possibility for a skeptic. Yeah, they can say, they can come up with a theory saying that, they had an axe to grind, so they are taking cherry picking and they are force fitting, and then they are creating the picture of Jesus. But the thing about the early writers of the gospel is that nobody really wanted to write it so much to recreate anything or to fabricate anything. One, that this is not a state sanctioned religion. This was a cult with members that has deflected from mainstream Judaism, and they were all literally running for their lives. So when we're thinking of the early disciples or the propagators of the faith, we should not be thinking of a group that is comfortable sitting with table chair in their circles of academia, trying to create a project to convince the whole world.
They're all
Okay.
from different places.
They're all from different places. When the leader was struck, everybody is scattered and they're all, moving from Jerusalem to Judea, to Samaria, and then to the ends of the world. All right. So the idea of cozy, comfortable compiling and cherry picking of information to fabricate a new philosophy and idea was probably last on their agenda because everybody was running for their lives.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
Saul,
Makes sense. Yeah.
Saul was going from door to door persecuting Christians.
Yeah.
Stephen is the first martyr. He was stoned
Yeah.
to death because he narrated the whole history from the Old Testament of how the Jews
Mm.
did not recognize this Messiah and that Jesus is the Messiah, and how they stoned him.
Mm.
And finally, he got stoned for that.
Mm.
So we are thinking, or we have to, in the background, imagine a lot of persecution and chaos and lack of surety and people trying to hush all of this.
Mm.
Now, when were all of this committed to writing and why? In the early fledgling church, which is not anywhere near the organized church that we are thinking of, they were like meeting in houses.
Mm.
They were meeting in the upper room. They were huddled together, closed for fear of persecution.
Mm.
Okay, they were not doing anything very freely.
Mm.
Now, when this church started growing and becoming more, as people took the truth of Jesus Christ to different people that needed to hear it,
Mm.
slowly there started coming into the church false teachings and heresies.
Okay.
There are the eyewitnesses of Jesus that are still living, who know the Jesus story, who heard this Jesus, who saw this Jesus, who touched this Jesus, who are still alive. While they are still alive, there is a circuit of people that are going and fabricating some other
parallel.
parallels.
Okay.
Okay. And they were trying to dilute and divide from within. That is when the writers of the gospel felt it essential to put their oral learning, which was locked up in the memory and as an oral tradition, into writing, so that
Okay.
everybody will know what really happened, and we will have a script to pass on to others, so that any other counterfeits will not be accepted uncritically by the naive people that were coming new to this faith. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, okay, are
Makes sense.
eyewitnesses to whatever Jesus said and did, right? Or at least were people that were close to
Close to they
eyewitnesses.
knew.
Right. They
the
knew
idea.
Jesus Christ as a historical person. And so they are setting out to write. And when Luke writes, he says to Theophilus, I am writing an orderly account so that you will know. Yeah. Theophilus, loosely translated, is lover of God. It could be any lover of God who wants to really know the truth. And so, in a place where Christianity was persecuted, was thought of as a cult, and where numbers are swelling up and increasing, there are people that are coming who really don't know the facts, right? And they are trying to bring in counterfeit stuff. And so all of this is committed to writing. So their purpose was not to prove, the Old Testament Jesus and the New Testament fulfillment of this historic Jesus.
Okay. Okay.
Their agenda was to preserve truth as it was revealed to them. And today, when we are studying the old and the new in retrospect with the 2020 vision, we, especially some people with skeptical minds, are thinking, oh, maybe they cherry pick this and that to make a case for Jesus.
Yeah.
But that's not how the context informs us.
But that's actually true. Because the style of narration in the New Testament is also kind of it's not like.
I think when you read the gospel for what it is, you know the situations and what they really wrote it
Absolutely.
and what was happening around them.
It's not like a storybook or
Yeah.
anything. It's like, as you were saying, it struck my mind. It's like this at this time, this person was the king, and this was happening in this
Absolutely.
area, and this is the scenario what happened at that time.
Absolutely.
It's like reading a newspaper.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so many secular evidences
As
that
you
all
were
of this
mentioning.
happened, and this king was ruling at that time.
True. Yeah. So very,
amazing.
very rooted in history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When Quirinius was the governor,
Yes,
Mm.
exactly.
when the Roman census was
Yeah.
taken, when Herod the Tetrarch was ruling, when Pontius Pilate was governor of Judea, procurator.
Yeah.
And all of these are historic titles for historic figures that
Yeah.
lived in a historic timeline.
Yes.
They're not characters out of nowhere.
Yes.
And if they were, there are other people
Yeah.
who thought Christianity was a wayward cult that had broken off from mainstream Judaism, they would have seen to it that none of this survived. If it is all stories, cock and bull story. But because it is rooted in history, especially Luke's gospel, and also all the genealogies of Matthew, yeah, tracing the way up to the first generation, yeah, all of this is verifiable stuff. All of this is really verifiable stuff. So it's not a figment of anybody's imagination.
Wow.
It
So I think
brings a
that-
lot to light that.
Yeah,
It is
it sets a
hard to
lot of.
know.
I know it's kind of sets a foundation
Absolutely.
to the what we are going to talk about. As in, like I had a lot of things that was like blocking my mind personally, because these questions were like that I had doubts, and I think you kind of set a very strong foundation in that.
But you still
sense.
play your skeptic role. Huh?
I am still. I do have a lot of other skeptical questions.
Please feel,
But
feel
this
free to
was
push back. Yeah,
one
yeah.
of the
Doubts.
doubts that was like in my mind, and I was very skeptical about that.
People's perspectives of Jesus, that's something that I think we need to speak. Because commonly, when we speak of the person of Jesus Christ to anybody, in an office context or, randomly anywhere, not everybody is thinking like I'm thinking.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's only fair
Yeah.
because I'm exposed to so much of truth, and therefore there is a way in which I look at him. But if you typically went and asked somebody in an Indian context, they will say Jesus is, we like Jesus because he is an amazing person. He is an amazing teacher. He is an excellent wisdom teacher. They'll be happy to grant him the status of a guru.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, or even a god man.
Yeah.
If you were to ask our Islamic brethren, they will say, yes, we revere Jesus. Yes, we have the mention of Jesus in our books
Yeah.
as well, in the Quran, but he is a prophet. Yeah, we respect him,
Yeah.
but he is a prophet and no more. All right? If you went and asked a Buddhist, he will say, yes, in the line of Buddha, Jesus was one of the bodhisattvas. So to a Hindu, Jesus is, let's say, a guru. To a Muslim, Jesus is a prophet. To a Buddhist, Jesus is a bodhisattva.
Yeah.
Yeah. To an atheist, maybe he is a moralistic teacher. Yeah. To a communist, he is a rebel. He's a revolutionary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he is many things to many people. And that's where I feel there is a kind of a bittersweet feeling in me. It's okay to think of Jesus as a guru and a prophet and maybe even as, let's say, quote unquote, revolutionary, whatever, depending on wherever you're coming from. But don't reduce the historic Jesus to just what you think he is. Because
Okay.
that's not enough. And that's not
Okay.
even fair. The historic Jesus can't just be a wise teacher. He can't just be a wisdom teacher.
Yeah.
He can't just be a revolutionary. He can't just be a good role model. He has to be more
Yeah.
because by his own admission, he says that he is more.
Yeah. That's one of the claims,
That he
truth
makes.
claims that he was making.
Right. And so many people have a problem with, let's say, the Christian faith or Christians who seem to be saying that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. But they don't know that it doesn't come from me or it doesn't come from any Christian. It comes right out of the mouth of Jesus, who says, I am the way, I am the truth, I am life.
Okay.
And so it is not anybody's fabrication. It is not anybody trying to be narrow minded and presenting Jesus only as one particular thing that they construe him to be. Jesus, by his own admission, says that he is the Son of God, that he is the Son of Man. He says, I and the Father are one. He who has seen me has seen the Father. No man can come to me but can go to the Father but through me. And these are all very, very sharp, heavy, serious claims that this person called Jesus is making. Like C.S. Lewis, who was once an atheist slash agnostic and who then became a Christian scholar, philosopher, he says, there are only three options that are available to you when you read about the historic Jesus in the Gospels and listen to whatever he says about himself. He's saying this Jesus could be either a liar because he's saying all kinds of
Yeah.
things that are not true about himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now, if he were a liar, why was he such a pathological liar, knowing that he will get crucified on the cross of Calvary?
Yeah.
No sane person would do that.
Yeah.
That brings us to the second title that C.S. Lewis says. Either he has to be a liar or he has to be a lunatic. Okay. If he is not a pathological liar, C.S. Lewis says, he is having these grandiose delusions of who he is, the Son of God, the Son of Man, and all of that. So he's saying he must be a lunatic.
Lunatic.
But all of the people that listened to the words of Jesus, including people that did not like him, that were envious and jealous of him, said, who is this? He speaks with so much of authority. And the Bible says they were all amazed at his teachings. There was so much of profundity in what he said that even the ones that did not like him could not, just push him to one corner. So how can a lunatic say such lofty things that are true and real and live a life that is so chaste that not even false witnesses who were set up could come with a case that will corroborate that he is so and so. So C.S. Lewis says, finally, if he is not a liar, if he is not a lunatic, then you have to grant that he is Lord. Liar, lunatic, or Lord. Because Jesus not just said, he did things that betrayed his divinity. He had control over nature. He had control over diseases. He had control over demons. He even had control over death. Yeah. And so here we have a person who's prophesied at least 400 to 700 years before his birth by Isaiah the prophet. And all of the prophecies about the Messiah are coming to be fulfilled in this one, Jesus Christ, including the place that he would be born, the manner in which he would be born, the time during which he would be born, the way of death that he would suffer, and the fact that he would rise again. And all of these things are prophesied, and there are at least about, by a liberal numbering, 300 messianic prophecies.
So
and Peter Stoner, a mathematician...
These were all in the Old Testament? Or
these were all in the Old Testament.
Okay.
All of these are Old Testament prophecies that were repetitively occurring about the Messiah that would come, that the Jews were waiting. And all of these prophecies will be fulfilled in that one person, the Messiah. And so every Jew literally was waiting for this Messiah to come.
Okay. Okay.
But where they got this all twisted is they were waiting for a political Messiah. And so they were waiting for a Messiah and a king who will come on a horse to Jerusalem. But 1 week from now, that's going to be Palm Sunday, and this Jesus chooses to come on a donkey to Jerusalem to say that he is not the political king, and they got it all twisted, but he is the king of all kings, and he comes in meekness and humility as the humble, suffering servant, the servant king.
So you were about to ask something.
So my question was, okay, if there is someone from like I talk to a lot of my friends when when I try to tell them about Jesus, they are like, okay, this is all fine. I really believe what Jesus did and what he said. The moral is also right. But why do I have to go to the next step
Mm-hmm.
and only believe in this? Like I'll like when Jesus talks about humility and how you treat others, I will take all of that. I will try to be a good person. But why do I have to go to the next step
Mm.
and in believing what he really says and like what Paul says that you have to believe in Jesus? So when it comes to that part, how do we? What do you think about it?
Sure, sure. So if you're looking at Jesus only as a, a great professor of ethics, okay, you can all do your salutes and clap for Jesus when he finished the Sermon on the Mount and go your own way. But this Jesus is not just a moral teacher. Okay, so the question of what more is Jesus will only be relevant to someone when they are thinking beyond their tunneled vision of looking at Jesus. Okay? Let's say, for example, all of humanity has this one big problem or predicament, which is called as sin. Now, sin is a bad word that most people don't like to hear these days. But basically, let me redefine it. Let me call it as a violation of purpose.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is this mic.
That is well put.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That is a better way.
Yeah.
I
So
think
there is this mic. The manufacturer of the mic made it with a specific intent for it to fulfill a specific purpose.
Makes sense. Yeah.
If the mic is not doing its purpose, the manufacturer is bound to get upset. And the manufacturer has to reset this mic and help it rediscover and fulfill its purpose, right?
Okay. Okay.
Similarly, humans, in my biblical worldview, are created fearfully and wonderfully in the image and likeness of God. The Latin word for that is imago Dei, in the image of the Deos, Dei, image of God. So I believe that I am an image of God and I have to reflect that image of God in me. So that's my life's purpose. Okay? Now, when I fail to do my life's purpose, which is to maximally reflect God in my thought, in my words, in my actions, then my purpose is violated. And that is what is called as sin in theological terms. Okay?
So, is it like if we do all what Jesus says, take all the teachings, and live a life like that, and does it put us in a place where there's no sin, and is it just enough for us?
Okay, I'll come to that.
Yeah.
But before that, one last bit in the previous one little footnote. So basically, what I'm saying is if somebody is only looking at Jesus for the moral lectures he's giving, you can be happy with that and settle and be where you are. It'll not really do any good to you personally. But if I am somebody that is struggling to live out my purpose in this life, and I want to do good, but I end up doing bad. I want to think right, but I end up thinking wrong. I want to speak words of encouragement, words that will edify and build up somebody, but I end up doing things that are destructive of somebody. I am not living my purpose. And Paul says in the epistles, he says, why do I not do what I want to do? And oh, wretched man that I am. And if anybody is really examining and reflecting on their own natures, there are many times that each of us is thinking wrong, speaking wrong, doing wrong, or failing to do right. All right? So all of us are on various levels in which we struggle to fulfill our purpose. Now, I'd like to call that as sin. Sin is a violation of purpose.
Hmm.
And when I'm not able to fulfill my purpose, I am sinning against my maker.
Hmm.
I am malfunctioning. And therefore, for me to refunction,
Hmm.
I need to go to my maker for him to reset me,
Okay.
to recalibrate me, or do something. And that's where Jesus comes into the scene.
So, so talking about Jesus, during his time, I also have this thought where, so now we have the Jews. Now Jews are waiting for a Messiah.
Mhm.
They want, they've been oppressed by the Rome,
Yes.
and they desperately want a
Waiting.
Messiah. They
Absolutely.
want someone, uh, somebody can come and please save me, or like somebody
Yes.
is going to come,
Yes.
or Messiah is going to come, Messiah is going to come. And I have read that there have been multiple claims during the timeline of Jesus Christ where people were saying, I am the Messiah, I am the Messiah.
Mhm.
Okay, there's another Messiah. Like,
Mhm.
it's like, have you heard of that story? In the village, the wolf has come, the wolf has come. Like, people were like, oh, okay, come on. By the 10th time, I was like, oh, okay,
When the
fine.
real wolf came, nobody listened.
Nobody listened. So something like that, like, so when people were claiming all those things, and people were getting crucified for that,
Mhm.
what made Jesus, like, set apart from there? Like, he also made the same claim,
Mhm. Mhm.
and he was also saying that I am the Messiah, and it's not like he's the only one who said that.
Sure.
It's not like they're not listening this for the first time.
Mm.
They're listening this for maybe a number of times, and he died. Like, what was that in that time? How would have that been in that
Right. So,
period of time?
I can also claim to be the Messiah,
Exactly.
but I won't. I know better about myself. But see, the context, you set the context right.
Hmm.
The people of the Jews
Jews.
were oppressed for 400 years in Egypt,
Hmm.
and then there came a Messiah, quote unquote.
Hmm. Yeah.
Messiah with a lowercase m. And
Hmm.
who was that Messiah for them at that time? Moses.
Yeah.
Then, when they came into the land of Canaan,
Hmm.
Moses was gone, and the leadership was passed on to Joshua
Joshua.
and then
Yeah.
Caleb.
Yeah.
And so they were in some ways messiahs with a
Hmm.
small m. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then came the kings. Saul, the
Hmm.
first king. The people
Hmm.
wanted a king, but Saul became a failed project too soon
Yeah.
because of his pride and lack of obedience.
Hmm.
And then came David,
David.
a man after God's own heart.
Hmm.
And then again, he had certain flaws. And then
Hmm.
came Solomon, he had flaws. So every leader that is coming seems to be coming with a promise, but they are getting
Fa-
snuffed out because of whatever vices they were doing, or just because they were mere men.
Hmm.
All right. So the Israelites were very, very prideful of the fact that they are the only chosen people and that their God is the only true God. And because of their belief in God, God is dispossessing the nations and giving them a nation. All right. Now, all of this went well as long as they were obedient to God.
Hmm.
Now, if good times last too long,
Hmm.
then we lose our dependence
Yeah.
on the giver of that goodness.
Yes, that is
Right?
there.
So Israel did that not just once, not twice, multiple times.
Hmm.
Again and again, again and again. When God would give them freedom and God would give them peace, they would become wayward. And then they would go into captivity. Again, they will cry and repent. And then God will again, bring them out with a mighty hand. And then they'll be okay for some time. Looks much like us, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All of us, yeah?
Yeah.
And so that's the way it is. That's the way it is. So at this particular point in time when Jesus is coming, they are under Roman rule.
Yeah.
Yeah? Roman rule. But Roman rule was a very peaceful rule for the most part, because even though the Romans conquered, the Romans would keep a local representative chosen from among the ethnicity or from the group of
Yeah.
people that they were, capturing.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so Herod,
Herod. Yeah.
is, let's say, half Jew.
Yeah.
All right. So the people were again really waiting for a deliverer because they were paying taxes. They were paying heavy taxes. All right. And their pride was hurt. They are no more a free kingdom. They are ruled by a foreign government and a representative of that government. So they're waiting for the Messiah. And many messiahs are coming thinking that this is only a political war. Okay? And so, in the mind of the Jews, the Messiah, the word means anointed one, is a word that only meant of military liberator, a political liberator. They did not have the depth of understanding that we have today. All right? So, there are many that have claimed to be pseudo messiahs. But the real mark of the Messiah lies in whether the Messiah fulfills the prophecies concerning his birth, his life, his death. Okay? And it was only the person of Jesus Christ that was born the way the Messiah was supposed to be born, which is virgin birth. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, virgin birth is very laughable.
Yeah. It's,
Right. I mean, nobody would have had this idea of virgin birth, let's
Exactly.
say. Huh? So, this virgin birth. And people actually made snide remarks of Jesus when he grew up. During his younger days, the fact that he was virgin born would have been known to people. And so they are using certain words that would have broken, any person. Yeah. And so here we have this Jesus who is virgin born. He is quote unquote choosing to be born in Bethlehem. Under what kind of circumstances? Under census circumstances. They live in Nazareth, but because of the census, they had to come down to Bethlehem. Yeah. And Bethlehem, Ephrata, is what the prophecy says. He should be born in that place. And he was born in Bethlehem. If the census was not called for, he would not have been born in Bethlehem. Then he goes to Egypt, which is another prophecy. The Son of God will be there in Egypt. And then he comes out of Egypt when things are safe. And there are prophecies that seem to be saying about his whereabouts in Galilee, Nazareth. Yeah. He'll be called Nazarene from Nazareth. Yeah. And that he will be sold for 30 pieces of silver. Yeah. That he will be hung on a cross. That he would live a life that is chaste and pure, a sinless life. So all of these prophecies about Jesus, yeah, at least around 300 messianic prophecies, most of which Jesus fulfilled in his lifetime. There are future prophecies that will get fulfilled in his second coming. But there is no one pseudo messiah that claimed to be a political messiah that fulfilled even the first of the prophecy, which is that he had to be virgin born.
When we talk about prophecies and the virgin birth, I somewhere read that even in the Hindu Vedas, it's mentioned about a prophecy of a virgin birth. So my question when I was reading that was, because everyone back in that day were trying to know who God was. Probably the people in India also might have tried to know who God was. And we know that God talks to everybody. It's not like he chose a set of people. He talks to everyone. He spoke to Cornelius, who was not a believer.
Sure.
So probably is that a prophecy that God has sent it to them? And would have probably been misinterpreted after a while. Can that be a prophecy about Jesus Christ itself?
Okay, so first of all, I'm not sure of. I'm not factually sure
About
of the
the
mention
Christian
of a virgin birth in the Vedas. There are traditions where they say that Krishna also was
Yeah.
virgin born.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think it is in the Vedas.
Mm.
Yeah. And I don't even know whether it is one tradition that believes that to be, or all traditions under Hinduism that
Hinduism.
think about
It's
Krishna,
like that.
think of that
Mm.
like that. Okay. So there's some uncertainty. I'm no expert in Indology or in Hinduism.
Mm.
But there is, to kind of stretch your question back,
Mm.
there is a hypothesis called as Jesus is a copycat savior.
Okay.
Okay. Or Christianity is a copycat religion.
Mm.
Okay. So there are many, let us say, mystery religions that predate Christianity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Like, for example, the cult of Mithras. The cult of Mitra, okay, or Mithraism. All right.
What is this?
That is
Mithraism?
something that developed in the Iran, Iraq, Persian area,
Got it.
This was before Christ.
predating Jesus.
Jesus,
Okay.
predating Jesus.
Predating Jesus.
Okay.
Before Christ. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is Isis or Osiris. All right. Egyptians.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And there is also Dionysius.
Okay.
Okay, the cult of, or the mystery religion of Dionysius. So there are at least at least 4 or 5 of these mystery religions that are popular.
Do they make the same claim as?
Yeah, so I'm
something
coming to
similar?
that. So it is said that most of these 4 mystery religions had saviors that were virgin born, had
Okay.
saviors that had 12 disciples,
Okay.
had saviors that died and resurrected, and all of that. Okay.
Okay.
Now that's only at face value. Okay. If you actually go and start asking somebody who is a mythologist, he will tell you that all of these are very generic, sweeping statements by skeptics about mystery religions that predate Christ, trying to find parallels to the Christ of the Gospels. Okay.
So these were like created after the Jesus is like
Yeah.
through skeptics.
So the mystery religions were there before Jesus.
Okay.
But none of the mystery religions had any systematized writing or doctrine or teaching.
Okay.
Okay. These were myths.
Okay.
Now we need to make a big distinction between what is a myth and what is history.
Yeah.
Okay.
True.
Now, Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Okay. You said 1,000 years later
Yeah.
can be construed to be a true person.
Yeah.
Now, 1,000 years later, if you and I were alive, which we won't be,
Yeah.
we can say Harry Potter is a myth. Because Harry Potter did not exist in flesh and blood. There are stories about Harry Potter. There are imageries about Harry Potter. There are symbols about Harry Potter. There are merchandise about Harry Potter. There are books and manuscripts about Harry Potter. But did Harry Potter truly live in flesh and blood?
There is no evidence for that person's existence in history.
There is no evidence for Mithra. There is no evidence for Dionysius. There is no evidence for Isis, Osiris.
Okay.
There is no evidence. That is why these are called as mystery religions that are rooted in myths.
Okay.
Now, when we are speaking of Christianity, we are speaking of historic Christianity.
Yeah.
That's why the word historic is very important.
Yeah.
All right.
True.
So you need to, first of all, in your mind, make a big distinction about equating apples and oranges. One is one category, mythological figures. Another is another category. Now, if I wanted to write the next series in Harry Potter, I can say, a concluding series. I don't know. I don't follow Harry Potter. The concluding series, I can write that Harry Potter had 12 disciples. I can construct a story like that. That he died, and after 3 days that he rose again. 1,000 years later, when somebody reads that, they'll say, "Oh, Harry Potter's story is so close to the story of Jesus."
Actually, in Harry Potter, he comes back to life.
Oh, does he?
Thinking about it.
So let's. I mean, the idea of coming back to life is a beautiful idea. We'll
Yeah,
speak
yeah,
about that
yeah.
later.
It's like
Fascinating.
the villain is like something is like a Satan. He like kills and then he dies and then he goes in some realm
Yeah.
and then he comes back to life and then he defeats.
Yes. So dying and rising saviors is a motif
Yeah.
that is there in
Yeah,
the heart and
yes.
mind of people. All right.
Ah.
And why is that motif in the heart and mind of people?
Hmm.
And who is the one that really lived
Did it.
that out in flesh and blood is the bone of contention.
Hmm.
Okay, let's say, for example, the Avengers series. Are you guys fans of Avengers?
Yep.
Okay, okay. So is my niece and my daughter. So the Avengers series, basically, if you rip it threadbare, is a series that speaks about a guy
Hmm.
who has powers, not
Yeah.
just ordinary powers, superpowers.
Yeah, supernatural.
So the heart of everybody is crying for somebody that has more powers than us.
Hmm.
Somebody that's more powerful than us, more mighty than us,
Hmm.
that can do greater things than us, that can deliver us from something.
Hmm.
We always are looking for a hero
Mm-hmm.
because there is a villain.
Yeah.
We always are looking for a savior.
Hmm.
We're always looking for coming back to life from death.
Hmm.
We're always looking for ways to not die,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
live forever.
Exactly.
Now, all of these things, I can argue from a biblical vantage point as a Christian,
Hmm.
are all things that we are wired with.
Hmm.
Yeah, when we are made in the image and likeness of God,
Hmm.
okay, we are wired with these desires for right and not wrong. We have this sense of being marred and broken, so we want somebody that can fix us. We want a savior, we want a redeemer. We want a hero. We want somebody that will vanquish suffering and pain and death and sorrow.
It's like in a thought process
It
itself.
is
It's like
deep within all of us.
kind of wired in
Yeah.
thought process.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
when we
Yeah.
when a person sits down
Yes.
and wants to write a story,
Yeah.
as you're
This
saying,
is the
there.
plot line.
There's generally the plot line is like
Yeah. And the final beautiful thing in the fairy tale, and they lived happily ever after.
ever. Yeah.
Do you know where that comes from?
Yeah.
From Revelations.
Yes.
Yeah. Because if you read Revelation
Yeah.
against this fairy tale storyline, and they lived happily ever after happens only in the Christian worldview, where there'll be no more
House of
pain,
the
no
Lord.
more sorrow, no more tear, no more death. A fairy tale version of it will be they
Yeah.
lived happily ever after.
Yeah. So I also want to touch on the evidence based.
So did we finish the dying rising saviors?
Yeah.
So the dying rising savior basically is everybody wants that story.
Yeah, everybody
It's in the
wants that
heart of everybody.
Yeah.
But when you look at the person of Jesus Christ, he is the only one that is fulfilling all of the prophecies for the Messiah. According to Professor Peter Stoner, mathematical probability of one person fulfilling 8 prophecies is 10 raised to the power of 48. And the mathematical probability of one person fulfilling 48 prophecies is 10 raised to the power 157, which is a number that none of us know how to name. Yeah?
Now
With 157 zeros after one.
Wow.
Okay? And so many people have to be born in this universe for one person to fulfill how many prophecies? 48 prophecies. This is Peter Stoner, a mathematician, saying.
Okay.
He gave a project to his class. And they went and did this math, and they came and told him. And do you know the number of atoms in the known universe? 10 raised to the power 80.
Oh.
It looks like a small number.
Yeah.
But it is not.
See, see, you
It's
should
a known
not.
universe, and you know how big
It's a
the universe
curveball.
is.
You just throw a curveball at us. You're saying 10 to the power of 158, and you're comparing the universe's atoms, and then saying 10 to the power of
How
80.
many atoms do you think are between both of your mic
I
heads?
have no idea.
So we are speaking of the universe
Yeah.
in which the sun is only a pale star
Mm-mm.
in this solar system. I mean,
Mm.
in this Milky Way.
Yeah.
Okay. And there are millions of suns in the Milky Way.
Mm.
There are billions of suns in the other millions of galaxies.
Yeah.
So we are talking of a universe that is immense. And if the number of atoms in the known universe is 10 raised to the power 80,
Mm.
you can imagine nobody can fulfill the mathematical
Yeah.
probability of one person being born that will fulfill even 48 of the prophecies of Jesus.
Talking about all of these things, we have discussed a lot of stuff in depth. Now, let's come to the most important part that Jesus claims to be have done by his eyewitnesses and most of the people is the resurrection. And people claim that he pulled it off, the resurrection.
Okay. Pulled it off. I like
Pulled it
that
off. Yeah, he's like, yeah. It's like, yeah, he's the one who did it, is what the eyewitnesses claim.
Yeah.
But resurrection, it's a supernatural event.
Mm.
Like, see, as a person, I'm thinking as a person, like I am more of a scientific person. I think of science and the biological stuff and all those things. I think
Mm.
in my lifetime and in my understanding, person is dead means there's no like, okay, this if person is dead, he cannot come back to life.
Okay.
When there is a claim that is being made
Mm.
that this person, Jesus Christ, like rose from the dead, if I'm not able to believe that part, the discussion that what we have over here up until now wouldn't have a strong foundation or wouldn't
True.
have anything
Absolutely.
to follow up. So, like, what would you like to say about the resurrection part of Jesus?
Yeah, the resurrection of Jesus, according to the biblical worldview, is the linchpin on which everything hangs.
Hmm.
Okay? So Paul says in his writings in 1 Corinthians, I think, chapter 15, if the resurrection were not true, all of Christianity
Hmm.
will be a hoax. I'm paraphrasing, of course. Yeah?
Hmm.
So if the resurrection were not true, Christianity will fall on its face. He says all our preaching
Hmm.
is useless.
Hmm.
And who was Paul? Paul was a very, very zealous
Hmm.
Jew.
Hmm.
He calls himself as the Pharisee of Pharisees. Yeah?
Okay.
Trained under Gamaliel. If there was one person in the whole wide world at that time that did not like Christianity, it had to be Paul.
Okay.
And he actually showed it in action because he went from door to door and pulled people out and persecuted. And when Stephen, the first martyr, was being stoned, people laid their clothes, at the feet of Paul as witness. All right. So Paul is the most unlikeliest of Christ sympathizers. But he says, okay, after his conversion experience on the road to Damascus, Jesus is asking him in an appearance a very piercing question. Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Okay. Now, Saul is going and persecuting all the Christians, but Jesus is asking, why are you persecuting me? Because Jesus is persecuted, dead, according to the disciples, risen, and gone, seated at the right hand of the Father. But in the vision, he says, Paul, why are you persecuting? So that is Paul's epiphany moment. That is the moment he has an encounter with the risen Savior.
Isn't it a possible that he killed so many people and he felt bad?
And he was on a mission to go to Damascus. Yeah, it is very possible. It is very possible, but he was not in a frame of mind where he was sitting and reflecting, looking at the roof on a Sunday afternoon.
Okay.
He is on his horseback with
Okay.
letters
Hmm.
that he requested, okay,
Hmm.
to go to Damascus and persecute the Christian diaspora there.
So this guy is a person who has a mission
Yes.
and is very clear in his mission
Yes.
to go and persecute or
Yes.
kill and put
Yes.
people to jail whoever says
Yes.
or says like Christ, Jesus is like, is
True.
true.
Or that this Christian faith is true, or this person of Jesus Christ really died and resurrected, or whatever.
Hmm.
Now, for this Paul to actually say later on
Hmm.
that everything about the Christian faith hangs on this one linchpin called the resurrection
Hmm.
is something. Everybody has to step back and, in their sane mind, start thinking,
Hmm.
why would this guy do whatever he's doing?
Okay. So
Okay.
now the resurrection part, what I'm saying is like this is a claim made by Paul,
Yes.
and he's
Paul and other disciples.
okay. So
Yeah.
he's also okay. He's also saying that, but all these documents are written by Paul, or is also
Yes.
written by.
Yes.
So it is written by one person. So what I'm thinking is like the resurrection.
Not just Paul. In
Okay.
all the
The Gospels
Gospel,
is
Matthew,
written.
Mark, Luke, and John,
Okay.
all
Oh
of
yeah.
these other
yeah.
4 disciples are also writing about
Yeah.
the resurrection.
Resurrection part.
Yes.
But
Okay.
I think where you're trying to get
But
here,
where are you coming from?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what. Is it like, is the resurrection so important?
Absolutely.
Because I think Paul
Yeah.
is the only one who
No,
says.
no, I'm not
just
coming
John.
there. I'm not coming whether it's important or not. I'm coming whether the resurrection that they're saying has happened. How can I believe
Sure.
that the
Evidence.
resurrection like has happened?
So first of all, let us
Evidence.
establish
Yeah.
why the resurrection
Because
is so
I
important.
know one thing for a fact that like I cannot prove anything. If you ask me like okay, where is the proof?
Hmm.
I know for a fact that there are things that run based with evidences. There's a difference between evidence and proof.
Proof, yeah.
Yeah, that I know.
Pointers.
Pointers. I cannot like it's not like a repetitive thing
Yeah,
that
yeah,
happens. It's
That's a very good thing. Yeah.
it's-
So whenever we are doing, let us say, science,
yeah.
there are 2 methods in science,
Hmm,
right? Huh? One method is where we study what is called as past singularities. The formation of the earth is a
Hmm.
past singularity.
Hmm.
The formation of plants and trees and everything on the earth is a past singularity. Okay?
Yeah.
So, for studying past singularities, you have to use a method of science called as forensic science. What science? Forensic science.
Forensic science.
Just like there is a crime scene
Mm.
and you call a forensic expert. Now, he's not going to come and tell you, oh, please reenact the murder and let's see who really killed who.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
not possible. It's a past event. It is a past singularity. It can only happen once. So the resurrection is a past event. It is a singularity for the person of Jesus
Yeah,
Christ. It can
yeah.
only happen once.
Exactly.
So when we are studying a past singularity, using the tools of science, we need to understand that we can only apply forensic scientific method for studying that.
Yeah.
The other scientific method is empirical science. So you do the experiment in the lab, in the test tube,
Yeah.
and then you show
You can
God.
repeat it again and again.
Many number of times. Yeah. We can't do that for past singularities. Resurrection is a past historic singularity. And it has to be studied using the tools of forensic science. So what will forensic science do? They will look at the evidence of the crime scene. They'll look at some hair, some button that is broken, some chair that is pushed, some blood that is splashed, or murder weapon or whatever. Then they will reconstruct everything and make the best sense of the evidence.
Yeah.
This line of reasoning is all the time used in law and in medicine, and it is called as abductive reasoning. Abductive, abductive reasoning.
Okay.
Okay? So, abductive logic or abductive reasoning is given all of the evidences, what is the best case explanation for this scenario?
So what are the forensic scientific evidences that we can apply for the resurrection.
Resurrection. Okay. So now we are coming closer to the real question.
Yeah.
Okay? So first of all, I have established that the question of resurrection is a central question
Yeah.
to Christianity.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah.
If the resurrection fails,
Yeah.
all of Christianity falls flat on its face.
Yes.
I'm saying something very big,
Yeah.
but I'm saying it only because Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15:14, he says, if Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless and so is your faith.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in religion or religious studies, this is called as the falsification test. What test? Falsification test. If you falsify a religion on this point, then the whole of the religion collapses. So the great falsification test for the Christian faith is a resurrection.
Resurrection. Yeah.
Anybody skeptic or atheist or let's say person from another faith, they can come, they are welcome to look at the evidence and they are welcome to disprove the evidence and they are welcome to rip apart the resurrection if it is not historically true. Christians are saying unequivocally, without any fear, taking courage from Paul and his authenticity and the scriptures that are inspired, that the resurrection is the falsification test. And the fact that Jesus rose from the dead is as certain as any other fact or truth of Christianity. Point number one. Now,
Yeah.
point number two, now that we know there is so much of premium on the resurrection, we have to see how is it that we can find evidences for the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Okay. Okay.
And what are those evidences? Okay. Now, there are many experts who have done resurrection studies and who have devoted their entire life to studying the resurrection. One such scholar is Gary Habermas. Gary Habermas is a resurrection expert who studied the resurrection and is studying the resurrection for at least 40 years.
Wow.
Okay. And he comes up with 12 facts. Okay. And he calls his approach as the minimal facts approach.
Okay.
And the level of stringency he applies to this minimal facts approach is that all of these 12 points that he is giving as evidence to the resurrection should be points that even secular scholars would be willing to grant from purely a rational vantage point.
Okay. Okay. So he's making a bold statement.
He's making
over
a very bold. This is his doctoral work.
Because
This is his doctoral work. This is his life work, his seminal work.
if this is said to be false or like proven, like as you said,
Everybody will crucify Gary Habermas.
So the entire Christian faith that has been right now till now at this point
Absolutely.
falls down.
Yeah. So this
Okay.
approach again, allow me to read this quote.
Yes,
Is
yes.
called as the minimal facts approach. So he says this method considers only those data that are so strongly attested historically, so strongly attested historically that they are granted by nearly every scholar who studies the subject, even the rather skeptical ones. So he says, I'm not using a very convenient method to prove my case and say Christianity is true and resurrection is true. He's saying I am following a very stringent yardstick for myself. And what is that yardstick? That even scholars who are experts in the field, who are secular, the majority of them should agree to this, including the skeptical ones. Saying that these are strongly attested historically. So these are historians of a great repute who are not Christians.
Okay.
And shall I tell you the 12
Yes.
Minimal
yes.
facts very
Yeah.
quickly.
Yes, please.
The first one is Jesus died by crucifixion.
Okay.
He says can be established historically.
Hmm.
Second, Jesus was buried in a tomb.
Hmm.
Third, disciples despaired and felt hopeless.
Hmm.
Fourth, the tomb was empty a few days later.
Okay. Okay.
Fifth, the disciples believed they experienced literal appearances of the risen Jesus.
Okay.
Sixth, the disciples were indeed transformed.
Okay.
Seven, Jesus' resurrection was the center of their message.
Hmm.
Eighth, the disciples proclaimed the resurrection in Jerusalem, where Jesus was indeed killed.
Hmm.
Nine, as a result of the disciples' preaching, the church was born and grew.
Hmm.
10, Sunday became the primary day of worship
Hmm.
instead of Saturday. James, who is the skeptical half brother of Jesus,
Hmm.
while Jesus was alive,
Hmm.
himself got converted.
Okay.
12, the skeptic Paul converted.
Hmm.
So Gary Habermas is saying all of these 12 points
Hmm.
are points that even secular historians of the highest repute
Hmm.
will majority agree to, including the skeptic historians.
Hmm.
Okay, so it is one thing to go through all of these 12 and establish or show all of the 12, but I think we can easily take at least 4.
Hmm.
So my approach is the minimal facts approach, because from the 12,
Hmm.
I'm taking only 4.
Hmm.
Now, what are the 4? Jesus died by crucifixion,
Hmm.
can be verified historically. Second, that the tomb was indeed empty.
The death part of
Hmm.
Jesus, is it a possibility that Jesus actually did not die on the cross?
Yeah, that's called as a swoon theory.
and,
Swoon theory, yeah.
and then he was like in the tomb, and then he adds this after death experience in the tomb, and then he was like somehow got out from the tomb. Then he appeared to people.
Yeah, yeah.
So what can
It is a possibility, but I need more faith to believe that theory than to believe that Jesus actually rose, because that's easier to believe. I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
See, first of all, we need to understand what's happening here. Okay.
Yeah.
On Maundy Thursday,
Huh.
okay, which is a Thursday evening, is when Jesus is having the Last Supper with his disciples.
Okay.
That's the time he has his last meal.
Hmm. Yeah.
After that, Jesus goes with his disciples to the Garden of Gethsemane.
Okay.
There, Jesus is so much in anguish and stress
Hmm.
that he is sweating drops of blood. Medically, that's called as hemhydrosis.
Hmm. Hmm.
It has been documented physiologically in areas where there are people under so much of emotional stress in war zones that they will sweat blood. Their
Okay.
capillaries will
Yeah.
dilate
It's
and
like the blood will get mixed in the
sweat
glands.
and they'll come out. Yeah. Extreme stress. Okay. So you know of hydration and dehydration. You're
Yeah.
in Vellore. Yeah. You
Yeah.
must
Yeah.
be feeling it already. But here, Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane,
Uh,
not just dehydrating.
hmm.
Yeah. He is having, sweats of blood.
Hmm.
Okay. Dehydration to the highest degree.
Wow.
Then after that, he is being dragged like a criminal to 3 courts of law. Okay. Two Jewish courts and finally one Roman court. He is being kicked like a football all through this midnight. All this drama is happening. Then finally, when he goes to the Roman court and when he is not proved guilty, when there is a setup and 2 false witnesses are brought to rig up a story that he was actually saying and doing whatever he did not say or do, he was then sent to be flogged according to Roman custom. How many times? 40 minus 1. That
Yeah.
is 39 times that he was flogged. With what? A Roman flagellum, which had metal, sharpeners
Yeah.
and bone sharpeners towards the end. So
Yeah.
when it hit your skin, your back would just get ripped. The muscles would get ripped.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was 39 times.
39 times. So imagine the mental agony in the Garden of Gethsemane, the sweating of blood, the betrayal by the disciples, three, courts of law,
Wow.
and then flogging and mocking. And then finally he goes to the cross, and then he is nailed to the cross, nailed through the ankle, has a crown of thorn, and he says these 7 remarkable words. And he finally says, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And he breathes his last. And then a Roman soldier is coming to verify whether he was dead or not according to their custom. Because by sundown, they had to break the leg of anybody that was still alive,
Okay.
so that they can't push themselves
Push
up
themselves on.
and keep breathing and keep surviving. You understand how the cross is set up? So
Yeah. Yeah.
with the push on the leg, they will get another breath in their lungs. And so they had to break the legs. And then after having checked first with a spear, when blood and water are coming, perhaps he went near the pericardium. Pericardial fluid, lung fluid, everything is coming out. Okay. And then he decides not to break his leg. That is your first indicator that he is. Second indicator that he is dead. First indicator is a spear to his side, not breaking leg. Because the Romans perfected the art of crucifixion. And no Roman soldier will leave anybody alive and allow him to be, to be rescued by their family member later on to continue to live as a fugitive for the rest of their lives. Because if the crucifixion did not happen correctly, it is an insult to the Roman soldier who did it day in and day out. That is his job. That is his day job. Okay.
So
And
he had to
would
make
be-
sure.
he
this
had to
person-
make sure that it's dead. Just like,
Yeah.
when somebody is hanging somebody
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the prison,
Yeah.
there is a medical doctor who will verify and say this
verifies.
person is dead. So this guy took his profession so seriously, and it'll be such an embarrassment for him to let anybody alive. Because the punishment for somebody that let somebody alive is that you will be crucified on the same Roman cross upside down,
Oh.
which is what Peter wanted for himself.
Okay. Okay.
So there's a lot that is happening here, and people that don't know history are looking at possible conflation and, saying, oh, what about this and that? That's why I said I need more faith to believe that than to
Yeah,
believe
it makes
this.
sense now.
Yeah,
I think if you see history as it is and verify all of this, it all makes sense.
Yes. So we have
But
to be very contextual in our
Yeah.
reading.
Yeah.
We have to
that's very
research.
true.
Research.
We can't do hearsay theology.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
people do, hearsay skepticism. See, there are 2 types of skeptics. One is the internet skeptic. The internet skeptic is a very lazy, convenient skeptic.
Yeah.
He gets a lot of sound bites by being part of skeptic WhatsApp group and skeptic
Yeah.
internet channels.
Reels.
What he
shorts.
hears, he comes and thinks is
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
But there is an intelligent skeptic. You can be an intelligent skeptic. But go and do your research. Go and do your groundwork. Go and find out facts to disprove the resurrection. For 2000 years, the resurrection of Jesus Christ has stood the test of time. And so to posit a swoon theory, swoon means to faint. Now, it is the Muslim brethren that actually, propagate the swoon theory. They're saying that, Jesus, Allah is too good, that he cannot allow a righteous man to suffer. So somehow by an act of miracle, he took the body of Jesus and perhaps put Judas there. All right? And so the body of Jesus, which was fainted because of dehydration, whatnot, got revived when, it had to get revived. But you are looking at the blood loss, you're looking at the mental agony, You're looking at the Roman crucifixion.
Mm.
You're looking at the no breakage of bones, which is again a fulfilled prophecy. Not
Mm,
one
yeah,
of his
yeah, yeah.
bones shall be broken.
Broken. Yeah. Yeah.
Many Christians claim it for themselves, but it is a messianic prophecy.
Yeah.
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 And so Jesus says, none of Jesus's bones were broken.
Mm.
Yeah. The fact it was not broken was because he was dead by the time
Yeah.
they came to check him.
Yeah.
The fact that this guy let him,
Mm.
yeah, is a very, very serious thing because he took his profession seriously. And if he let anybody go, then he would be the next Bakra.
crucified upside down.
Yeah.
Yeah. True. True. So that is about the death
Crucifixion.
and crucifixion.
So I wanted to give you four minimal facts, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
First one.
Of the minimal facts.
Yeah.
The first one is the
Facts.
death of Jesus
Yeah.
by crucifixion.
Yes. That we
The
have come.
second is the empty tomb.
Yes. People say that his disciple stole it.
Yeah.
Okay,
There is a
okay,
theory
okay.
of that
There's
too.
saying that there's
Okay.
a possibility of
Okay, first of all, the disciples had all chickened out.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody, even before his trial, were helter-skelter
Yeah,
running.
yeah.
One of his favorites, or one of the so-called pillars, denied him thrice.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
And so you can understand the level of bravado and courage they had to steal, first of all. Okay.
Yes.
Second, okay, we have to understand the burial site of Jesus. The burial site of Jesus and the way it was secured. Now, already the possibility that Jesus's body could be stolen, because he said that he'll rise 3 days later, was there, that the authorities knew about it. And so they are saying, put more security so that the disciples don't steal the body. So there are securities there.
So the Jewish people they requested the Roman government to put more security because Jesus made such a claim that I
Yes.
will come back to life
Yes.
after 3 days.
Yes.
Okay.
And so they thought that
Okay.
the disciples will fabricate a story after stealing, let's say, his body.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Mm.
And so there were more people there standing guard through the night in shifts, 4 shifts,
Mhm.
all right, for 3 days.
Wow.
Isn't it? For 3 days.
Mm.
It is only after the 3rd day that this tomb is becoming empty.
Mhm.
Technically, actually, yeah. So there are guards that are standing.
Yeah.
There are rotatory, watches through the night and through the day.
Mm.
Multiple guards, and there was a massive stone, that was rolled over the mouth of the cave. And if you go and look at that stone, scholars say, I haven't been to Jerusalem and I haven't looked at it. They say that the stone has to go over a radiant. Yeah. So you have to push it against a gradient, and then suddenly there'll be a dip or a wedge. So it's like a cog wheel.
Mm.
So it's like a slant like that and up. So it gets locked there.
Yeah.
You cannot move it.
You can't move it.
It's not easy for
You can't easily move it.
So you have to lift it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And then
So
again-
you're pushing. Many people are pushing it against that slope, and then it goes and
locks there.
gets
it
locked.
locks there.
Yeah.
But if you want to open it,
If you want to unlock it,
yes.
you will need
Again,
twice the
yeah.
number of people
You have
perhaps
to
to
do
lift
that
it up
again
and
and then-
unlock it.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the important thing about the stone of Jesus being open, many of us think that Jesus had to have the stone open for him to escape out. We are thinking of Lazarus' story.
Yeah.
But you have to understand that the resurrected body of Jesus is a body that can walk through walls,
Yes.
like later we read in the
Yeah,
Gospels.
Yes.
Yeah. Interestingly, it is also a body that could fry fish and give
Yeah.
barbecued fish to his disciples.
He had a very big misconception.
And it is a body where he says to Thomas, who was questioning or asking rather for evidence,
Yeah.
come and touch my side. So it's a transformed body. It's a resurrected body. It's not like the body that you and I have. Whatever. It's a body that we won't understand now in this dimension, perhaps. But we can understand so much that it is a resurrected or a glorified body. It's a transformed body. It's a body that can go through walls and doors closed. Yeah. And therefore, it is a body that can come out of the tomb without the tombstone being open.
Open.
The tombstone being open is actually for the disciples to go in and see that he is not around.
Okay.
It's not for him to walk out.
So that's the empty tomb.
That is the empty tomb. Yeah. So Roman guards are there.
Yeah.
Then there is this way in which the stone
Yeah,
is.
stone was
Yeah,
moved,
and the
yeah.
tomb is sealed.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
sealed.
And the tomb is sealed. And the disciples had chickened out. They had
Yeah.
no courage. They were all covering in the upper room.
Yeah.
And
So
one girl
it leaves
named.
no option for them to steal.
Yeah. Yeah. Unlikely.
Yeah.
Somebody can still argue that they stole, but then I'll ask, where is the body? Why hasn't anybody found the stolen body till date?
True.
The body is still missing, right?
Yeah.
So, what did this resurrected Jesus, let's say, what is this, not resurrected, according to Swoon theory, he came back to consciousness, no? So, what happened to him after that? Why didn't people see him around or talk about him? Why was he again not teaching and preaching? What happened to the Jesus story after that?
Yeah, exactly.
If Jesus' story were not true, how did then Christianity spread so much? See, if Jesus said, Abba, once I got crucified and somehow I escaped, I fainted and
Yeah.
faked it and escaped. Let's put all of this to quiet. Let's not speak any more about it. Then there is no Paul, there is no Stephen, then there is no James, then there is
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
persecution, then there is everything is hunky dory. Peter would have gone back to fishing, no? Which he wanted to anyway.
True. True.
Is there any non-biblical reference or evidence about the resurrected body? Like, do we
No,
have
not
any-
about the resurrected body specifically per se.
Like at least someone seeing it, or other than the disciples, or other than
I
the
know why
people
you're
around.
asking that. It would have been nice if there was some.
Yeah.
But the initial thing that I established to you is
Yeah.
that more than a non Christian historian, I have shown to you that the Bible is the A class book of history. If you're asking me, Charles, what is the best work of history? I will say, hands down, the New Testament. Or hands down, the Gospels at least.
Gospels are.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because I have shown to you from the three secular
Yeah.
tests of historicity for
Yes.
any ancient document that the Bible is the one that passes with flying color. So my contention is that the Bible is the most reliable and authentic work of ancient history. All other
Nice.
books of ancient history, including the Gaelic Wars by Caesar or Homer's Iliad, yeah, or the writings of Pliny the Younger or Josephus' Antiquities, Jewish Wars, yeah, all of these are pale because they have 8 manuscript copies, some have 10 manuscript copies, some have 100, nothing has 5,000.
Wow.
And many
the
of these are at least
interconnection.
400 years away from the event. Most of these are 1,000 years away from 1 millennium. Now, this is the only one that is 30 years
30,
close.
35.
Yeah, or 60 years by a liberal dating. So I am saying it is good for you to ask, are there any skeptic sources to speak about the resurrection? Actually, no, none that comes to my mind. But there are Christian sources, and the Christian sources don't become any less historic because they are Christian. Luke, at least, was a ace historian, a historian of high caliber. He gives all kinds of details about what was happening in the Roman government at that particular then ruled.
Yeah,
you know,
because the literary style of
the literary style and telling the
Yeah.
names of governors and procurators and proconsuls and the time of the census and every detail is historically rooted. And so he is nowhere lesser than any
Yeah.
other secular
Yeah.
historian. And so
That's
even though there are nothing from, let's say, secular historians about the resurrection, you can't say, oh, then it is all invalid.
Yeah.
Because here, we are reading the most uh, reliable historic document that has ever been on planet Earth.
I think
Mm.
we have made it like Bible can be more reliable than the
Yes.
secular source.
Yes. So the problem is many of us, Christians,
Yeah.
have only laid premium and emphasis on the Bible as the Word of God,
Mm.
Yeah.
which it
Because-
is.
Because if anyone
Which it
talks
is.
about evidences, it's like, okay, tell me something that is not in the Bible.
Yeah.
Bible
So
itself
first
is
of
a
all, we have to,
Bible.
first of all we have to understand that the Bible itself is a
Yeah.
great book of history,
Yeah.
Mm.
like no other books.
Mm.
Then we have to come and say why we believe this historic book to be the authoritative word of God.
Mm.
Mm.
Now we are working reverse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are first believing it to be the word of God, and then we are now struggling to find it as a historical textbook.
Yeah. Exactly.
But first, it is a historic book
Historic
that everybody agrees, including
the
non-Christians.
secular
Yeah,
people
yeah.
also, yeah, they agree. It's like
The struggle they have is in why should we believe this
Yeah,
historic work to be the word of God? There is an answer for that as well.
Mm.
So, yeah, your question is valid,
Mm.
but the historical writers, the gospel writers, are not
no
any
less.
no
Yeah.
less, are no less.
So, like, as we covered, the second part is like, so there's no possibility of
Empty tomb.
it cannot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's empty tomb and it cannot be like stolen.
Yeah,
Because I think you mentioned very
at
clearly.
least 3 or 4 reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is very much
Yeah,
clear.
yeah.
So it's like, what is the like third point that?
And also, if the guard allowed the stealing to happen, the guards would be killed.
Because
Yeah,
they
which
were,
is
they
something-
know
yeah,
what
that's
happened, the
that's
consequences.
a duty.
Yeah.
A guard allowing a body to be stolen
Yeah.
is failure in duty.
Yeah, but in the Bible it mentions that Jesus rose back from the dead. Were the guards there or were they not there?
No, they were not there.
They were not there.
Yeah. So now the thing that we have to understand is what are we doing? We are reconstructing the best plausible explanation from the forensic evidence that is there.
Mm.
Now, the forensic evidence that is there is that Jesus was crucified,
Mm.
that the tomb is empty,
Mm.
that there are post-resurrection appearances of Jesus,
Mm.
and that the disciples that were chickening out
Mm.
were actually becoming proponents of their faith, even though they had the danger of being persecuted like Jesus himself.
Mm.
Now, all of a sudden, what is it that happened after 3 days
Mm.
that turned everything upside down?
Mm.
What happened to them? If at all there's anything that happened, it has to be like a failed project,
Yeah.
another pseudo messiah,
Yeah.
another
yeah.
failed story, another pathetic end. Let's all
yeah.
pack up and let's all go and mind our own business.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, but nobody is minding their business.
Mm.
Yeah. They are in the upper room for 40 days. Yeah. And then they are empowered, they are emboldened. And what is happening in these 40 days? Jesus is appearing to them
Mm.
at least 12 times
Mm.
to different groups of people
Mm.
at different points in time. And
Mm.
finally, he is appearing to a collective group of 500 people that are watching him go up against the laws of gravity into heaven like a balloon. Huh?
But is there a possibility that they are like hallucinating or something?
Yeah, that's another.
500 people is
That's an-
Because what I'm asking is
Yeah.
the disciples were very close with them,
Hmm.
and he has worked out a number of miracles throughout, and like is what claim that they were like making as like some I think Josephus or someone or some other secular historian who was not part of the follower of Christ. He mentioned that he's a magic worker
Hmm.
or anything.
Hmm.
So he had quite a number of followers, and he was like pretty famous
Hmm.
in his time.
Hmm.
And he's like there is his death, and then people are like so agonized by his death
Sure.
that like so many people are like sitting there and like is saddened, and because of this sadness they are having this hallucination and imagination where they're thinking, oh yes, here we
Sure.
have the
Yeah.
Christ with us and he's
So,
talking to us. Oh,
yeah.
he's there. Oh, he's here. Like, isn't that the possibility?
Yes and no. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. First of all, this theory is called as a hallucination theory. This is another theory that is put forth by skeptics who are against the resurrection. All right. Now, it is possible as a comfort mechanism for somebody that has lost a dear one in a very shocking, sudden way to suddenly think, oh, they're talking to me. I'm hearing them. I saw them in the room. There's something that moved. Or maybe they are trying to communicate with whatever. So it's a part of our comfort mechanism. All right. It happens to people. But it can happen maybe to one person. Yeah. Or maybe it can happen to at different times, to different members of the family, saying something similar
In the
here and
same
there.
way or in the
Different way. Not
Okay.
in the same way.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But it can never happen to at 12 different points in time, spread over a period of 40 days.
So this is a psychological fact.
Yeah, I'll read a couple of quotes from psychologist
Okay. Okay.
in a bit.
Yeah.
So Jesus's post-resurrection appearances,
Okay.
yeah, are happening at least 12 times, as recorded in the historic gospels, and it's happening to different groups of people. It is happening even to Thomas, the famed disciple to India.
Yeah.
He was an evidentialist. Yeah.
Yes.
And he had to ask for evidence if he were to come to India, right?
Yeah. The doubting is
And
famous.
so God honors that desire and he says, okay, Thomas, I know last time when I came, you had gone out for something. Now I've come back again. Why don't you put your hand on my side and find out? Okay. So somebody who's even skeptical. All right. So Jesus is appearing at 12 different points in time to different groups of people in his resurrected body, a body that is making fish barbecue for them by the seashore, a body that is, allowing them to touch and, examine his wounds, a body that speaks, a body that is walking through closed doors. Yeah. All of that is happening. Finally, the culmination of all of this is 500 people. 500 is a large crowd, right? Yeah, a typical church has 500 people for a Sunday worship, let's say.
Yeah.
500 people standing on that mount, yeah, Mount of Olives, and they are looking at this Jesus that is physically going up. Now, mass hallucination is not recorded anywhere in any of psychological textbooks or in psychiatry books or in any clinical scenarios. Allow me to read a couple of psychologists for you.
Yeah.
Psychologist Gary Collins was asked about the possibility that hallucinations were behind the disciples' radically changed behavior. Collins remarked, hallucinations are individual occurrences. First point. By their very nature, only one person can see a given hallucination at a given time. They certainly aren't something which can be seen by a group of people. All right? There's another psychologist also that is saying something, but I'll save you the trouble. I'll read something from Bart Ehrman. Now, Bart Ehrman was a believing Christian, but now he is an agnostic.
Okay.
Okay. And he is a big critic of, the Christian faith. And he says, he's a prominent New Testament scholar as well, who is outspoken now about his agnosticism. And he says, what is certain is that the earliest followers of Jesus believed that Jesus had come back to life in the body, and that this was a body that had real bodily characteristics. It could be seen and touched, and it had a voice that could be heard. So he says, what is certain is this. So he says it is very certain that the disciples saw a body that could be seen and heard and touched. And who is saying it? A non-sympathizer in the Christian faith.
Christian. Oh. Okay.
But was that when he was in Christianity or when he became agnostic? Do we have that data of when did he?
I need to check that out.
Yeah.
I need to check that out. The Bart Herman series is an entirely separate series. Why he was initially a Christian, and why now he is an agnostic is a different, podcast itself.
Yeah.
But he
Gives us
is
the proof that the
yes,
resurrection
and
body is-
even if he had said this before, he has not said anything to
Yeah.
cancel it or
Yeah.
to retract it or
Yeah.
recant it.
Yeah.
He continues to be a New Testament scholar as an agnostic. So you can think of him as a secular, agnostic, historian, an expert historian.
So we can say that the hallucination doesn't happen
Is a psychological possibility in individuals, but
so
not in a
it cannot
collective group
happen
of
in the
500,
mass.
not 12
gathering
times again and
and-
again and again. Yeah.
Okay. So that
Now,
kind
again,
of-
if it is a hallucination, I'm just thinking for myself loud, why would they risk their life? Okay. See, I would say that my mother who passed away 2 years ago to cancer, is I feel like she's talking to me or I just saw her. But if somebody were to put a gun to my head, why would I keep repeating that?
Yeah.
For the rest of my life and keep preaching that to everybody from rooftops with a gun to my head.
Makes sense.
And why would, masses of people do that and go into the gladiatorial rings of Romans?
Yeah. I
be
saw
thrown
it's
to
like
lions.
one of the history channels is like
Yeah. Why would they do that? And
one
why
of
would
the
this
main
lie...
that was one of the main reason why Christianity spread in the Roman Empire. Is like
Absolutely.
people in the Colosseum
They saw the authenticity of the Christian faith and the integrity with which they held on to this truth, even in the face of death, and not recant it. Because there has to be something personally that have happened in their lives, no?
So people were like looking at the people who were like torn apart by the lions or anything, and they were saying like, why are they so willingly accepting this death?
Yes, and why
What
would
is that person following?
Why would they do that if it was a hallucination?
Yeah, it's like.
No,
would you
see, hallucination gives me comfort. So that is kind of very cathartic to me to think that my mother is, let's say, still somewhere, whatever. I don't believe that, obviously. But I'm just saying from a psychological point of view. But if I'm going to make that my life mission to say that my hallucination is indeed true and I'm willing to die for it and I'm preaching my hallucination day in and day out. Let's say Paul. Why would Paul preach this hallucination when he was flogged, similar to Jesus?
Yeah.
3 times. Yeah? 40 minus 1. Jesus was flogged once. Paul is saying, shipwrecked, beaten, thrown to wild beasts, left for dead, persecuted everywhere he went. Why would somebody do that?
Because he was the person who was living a very comfortable life.
Yeah.
Like he was like the Pharisees of the Pharisees is what you had mentioned earlier. Yeah. Because and the question arises, why would someone willingly do this?
Die for a lie.
If they know it's a lie.
Why would anybody die for a lie?
Yeah.
Why would a whole community die for a lie? Why would they keep dying for one single lie again and again and again for centuries together? Even today, martyrdom is happening. So if it is a hallucination cult, it should have somewhere down the line kind of stopped or evaporated. It can't go stronger and stronger and stronger in strength. Now, to become a Christian is by no means anything that is convenient to me. I know by becoming a Christian that I am prone to be persecuted and troubled for my faith, ridiculed and mocked. Now, if I am putting my bet on something, I'm not putting it on a hallucination theory and a hallucinating group of people and a savior that, came up in a hallucination. There is a cost every Christian is paying for being a Christian, no? It's not a faith of convenience. It is a faith of conviction. It is a faith grounded in truth.
So if the claim of resurrection is true,
It
Like-
is true.
what does it mean to a person, a secular person? Like,
Can you kind of elaborate, like a secular
as in,
person
like,
mean?
say
Somebody
suppose
that doesn't believe in the
somebody
person of
doesn't
Jesus.
believe and like any, like, we put out this, like, we put out this evidences for like resurrection and this, like, and then does that somewhere needs a leap of faith at some point in time?
Okay, see, the evidences for the resurrection logically points us to Jesus as the resurrected Savior. Okay? So if Jesus was true about this one sign that he will give us, which is a sign of resurrection, and he fulfilled it 3 days after he was dead and came back to life, true to his prediction or prophecy, then this Jesus is trustworthy. Then everything that this Jesus says is not a lie. He is not a lunatic. And what does he say? He says that he is Lord. And he says that he is the only way to the Father. And there is no other way but through me. And so from the resurrection, I have to work backwards to discovering that this Jesus is truly who he claimed and lived to be. So then I understand that he is my Lord. He is my Redeemer. He is my Savior. What does he save me from? He saves me from myself. He saves me from my sins. He saves me from my vices. Because the wages of sin is death. And I, as a sinner, deserve to die in the framework of a just and righteous God. But Jesus comes and purchases my forgiveness and takes that punishment on himself at the cross of Calvary so that I can be forgiven and God's justice and righteousness can be fulfilled. And that I can have a resurrected forever life with Jesus Christ. And I have today the hope of resurrection. And when my family members die, I have the hope of resurrection. That they also, like Jesus said, Jesus says, that when I come back again, the dead in Christ will rise up and they'll be united with Jesus. And so for a Christian, all of this gives me hope. The atheist philosophy does not give me hope.
Exactly.
Because we are molecules in motion, and then one day when we die, we disintegrate and become manure. That is our greatest contribution to humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do not believe that the cycles of rebirth and reincarnation, though it may be comforting for one cycle, is not comfortable when there are millions of cycles before which I get, liberated from this cycle. It is actually now very, very depressing to think that I will again and again and again and again and again be reborn. And to escape from this karmic cycle, it'll take me millions of cycles. Okay? Right? And
But there is no solid evidence. Is there any solid evidence for that reincarnation stuff? Because
that's
I think that's a
big
whole
thing.
lot of
That's a big thing, and it is delving into, let us say, another world tradition or world religion.
Yeah.
I'm not here to.
But that is not related to resurrection.
No,
right?
no,
That,
no.
Resurrection is like something.
Yes. Resurrection is different from reincarnation.
Reincarnation. Yeah.
The concept of reincarnation says that our souls, our bodies die, and that souls can continue to live, go and inhabit another body in the next cycle of life.
Okay.
And which body depends on your karmic scale, whether it is positive karma or negative karma that you've accrued. If it is positive karma, then you will be born as a higher order in the varnashram, in the caste hierarchy. Or if your karmic score is less, then you will be born as a lower order, life form, lesser than a man. Yeah?
Okay.
Or if you were a higher order
Does
in the
this
caste
include
system,
the caste system?
you will come to a lower order.
This is based on the caste system.
Yeah, the hierarchies are based on the
Based on the caste system.
So when there's balance only, they get out of that loop is what it
Yeah,
is like.
yeah. But I'm no expert, and I think delving into
No, but this is what the reincarnation concept is.
concept. Yes.
Few people actually, I've read somewhere that they claim that they remember their past life, but there's no clear
But
evidence.
there's no clear
that
evidence
They say,
for
they
this,
say
yeah.
it's a psychological thing.
Yeah, for me, as a person of science, is like my thing is like completely based on evidences.
See,
So as we were talking about the resurrection, as you have laid out the evidences,
evidence is
I
so
keep thinking
strong.
about what you were saying. It is difficult to avoid these evidences.
yeah, if you are true, if you are a true thinker,
Yeah.
and if you're honest with yourself, and you have no other agenda, okay, the body of truth that is staring at you is very much like Pilate staring at Jesus. Do you know the story of Pontius Pilate, who stared at Jesus and is asking a question, what is truth? And he kind of turns away and walks away. He's standing in front of truth, looking at the personification of truth, and he is with a smirk asking, what is truth? As if truth can't be found. And he is, so close, yet so far away from truth, and chooses not to see it and walks away. That is the greatest tragedy that can happen to anybody, because the body of evidence is enormous. It only takes some amount of intellectual honesty and a lot of humility to see truth for itself. And we should not be like Pilate, staring at Jesus, okay, or at the evidence for the resurrection, and being glum in our own pride and turn away because it's inconvenient. Many people don't want to accept the truth of Christianity because it calls for a lot of commitment
That
and
is true.
conviction.
That is something that I've heard.
They have to leave many of their conveniences.
Yes.
So there are several barriers to faith. There are cultural barriers, there are moral barriers, there are intellectual barriers, which is what I hope we kind of cleared in today's conversation.
Yeah.
But if there is a true intellectual who is intellectually honest, the evidence for the resurrection is staring at him. And he has to work his way backwards to who is this person, Jesus, that proved his worth in gold through his resurrection, and then understand the person of Jesus and have a relationship with him, invite him to be their savior, and surrender to his lordship.
I think we covered a lot of the resurrectional part. Is like very important thing that you have said. It's like very.
It is the linchpin on which everything hangs or falls, like Paul says.
And as a thinker, I think it makes a lot of sense when I think about it, as you have laid down the evidences, and the resurrection is true.
It is indeed true.
Yeah. And I think it helps me to
process it.
Process and deepen more, like, okay, I haven't seen it in this perspective. And the main pinnacle point that I saw in this conversation is something, as a person, see, I'm a very logical person thinking, I would not die for a lie.
Absolutely.
That is something that like any person with a normal intellectual thing wouldn't do normally, who wants to save himself. If he knows that what he's saying is a lie, and someone is coming and telling him like, okay, now I'm going to kill you, like, and that I'll be like, I know it's a lie. Why would I die for it? And I think that point, because all of the disciples of Jesus Christ were like brutally, I think, murdered in some way or the other.
Absolutely.
And they stood by like what they said.
Yes.
And a lot of followers of, as you were mentioning, in the Colosseum of Rome.
Oh, yeah. The story of Perpetua and Felicitas.
Yeah.
She was only about 22, I think, from an aristocratic family. And she was thrown into the gladiatorial ring. And the only thing that her elderly father said is, you have a suckling child. She had a baby, an infant that she was nursing, even while in the prison. The father said, at least for the sake of your child, why don't you recant? All that they had to say back then was, Caesar is Lord. Okay? Because Caesars were called as Lord. Yeah? So, and she said, I cannot do that to my Christ. Because Christ alone is Lord. And there was a slave girl next to her. Her name is Felicitas, and she was pregnant with her child. Both of them lost their lives standing for the truth, because the truth is the truth. You can die for the truth, but you cannot die for a lie in your sane mind.
Wow.
And not multitudes and multitudes and multitudes of people up until this year are dying for this truth.
Yeah.
They're not dying for a lie.
I think this doesn't even happen in the first century or second century.
Oh yeah,
even right now,
I can give you examples of persecution that is happening. Not very far from where we are sitting, perhaps.
Yeah. It happens now. It is happening.
Very recent and so much of thing.
Even right now, if we search for it, people.
Oh yeah.
Still,
there are reports that
you
come.
can take my life,
persecution
but I will
relief.
not,
Yeah. I will not recant.
Yeah. I think that is a very strong thing. I think everything based on the resurrection is what strongly.
Yeah.
It is from there. That point onwards is the faith and everything. People who yes, this is the truth.
Yeah.
And
one little word to the skeptics out there. See, this skepticism is a position where you are doubting everything intellectually. It's okay to doubt with a desire to find the truth and get clarity. That's a good posture. I encourage that.
Yes.
Yeah. By that token, even St. Thomas could be called a skeptic.
Skeptic. Yes.
But you should not be a skeptic for the sake of being a skeptic. You should not keep doubting for the sake of saying, I am a doubter, I am a skeptic, I will always be doubting, whatever evidence you throw at me. Your doubt should lead you to truth. When evidence faced you.
Because that is the purpose of a skeptic.
Yes. Now, skepticism itself is now becoming a religion.
Yeah.
And it's become a fad. It's a cool thing. Oh, I'm a skeptic. It's cool to be a skeptic.
Skeptic, yeah.
A skeptic is not somebody who's just destroying and deconstructing truth and evidence. A skeptic is one who is not readily believing anything that is thrown at him, but has this mind of inquiry to find truth and go to the bottom of truth. He should not be afraid of truth.
Yeah.
So a skeptic should be actually a seeker of truth rather than a seeker of untruth or a deconstructor of truth.
Rather than trying ways to put it wrong or you said, I think you use the word internet skeptic and intelligence skeptic, right?
Yeah.
That's so true. I think people nowadays, than internet, it came to reels.
Yeah.
See a 15-second video and their faith completely goes
Oh
there.
my God, that's terrible. Yeah.
Gone.
15 seconds. You're saying average watch time, if you go and see, it's 8 seconds.
Yeah. That's even less, no? They don't even see the entire reel. They just push it off.
Yeah.
And they base their entire faith or whatever they have on that belief on a 8-second video. That's so wrong to be.
So that's the intellectual level to which we have stooped down.
Yeah.
So that is why I find this verse very, very encouraging, where Jesus says all of the 613 laws and commands can be reduced to two.
Yeah.
One is
Love.
love the Lord.
Love the Lord.
And two is love your neighbor.
Neighbor.
That's the simplified version. But the real version, Mark 12:30 says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, which is your seat of emotions,
Yeah.
soul, which is your seat of will or decision making, mind, which is your seat of intellect, and strength, which is your seat of physicality. So love the Lord with your heart, soul, mind, and strength, with your whole being. You can't say mind, oh, no, never mind. No, you have to use your mind to love the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I find that many people are just happy to believe a 8-second reel than to dig deep. Most of our theology has become hearsay. We have to start becoming people that revive a rational faith. There are thinkers and thought leaders that ask good questions. It's okay to ask God questions.
Yes.
But don't question God. Somebody said.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
True. Wow. I
If
think
you have doubts, then I would encourage the skeptic to doubt his doubts.
Yeah.
First. A skeptic never doubts his doubts. Have you observed that?
That's true.
His job is just to doubt.
Yeah.
But he doesn't doubt his doubt.
Yeah. Whether my doubt is actually valid or not. No, my doubt is like.
Yeah.
It's like.
It's been a long time. I don't know how we are on
I
time.
think we had a wonderful conversation.
I
with all
enjoyed it. I
these
enjoyed
things.
it, Akash, and I enjoyed
I think I'm
Just-
supposed to wrap up pretty early, but then I got carried away with after the resurrection when we were talking about the skeptical part and the people who were like martyred and stuff, and I
Yeah.
think I got a little bit carried
Yeah.
away in that conversation.
Yeah.
And
I think it was
yeah.
a nice structure that we put up.
Yeah, it was
For
very,
people
very
actually-
yeah.
free flowing and
Free
very
flowing.
logical. Yeah.
Logical conversation that we have put up, and so thank you so much for
My
joining
pleasure.
us this conversation.
My pleasure.
And
Thank you for coming over to Vellore, to our place,
Thank you
and
for having us over here.
doing this.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful meeting all of you and the crew. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks to Dexter too. And I hope this is of some use to someone.
Definitely,
May God
definitely.
bless this to people.
Yes.
as he
Yes.
sees
And
fit.
we have a question for the audience saying that Jesus has, in this whole conversation, in this whole period we had, like, Jesus is making a truth claim.
Yeah.
And everybody else is making a truth claim. So I urge all the skeptics who are watching this video that you dive deep into the questions and take points from here and look for yourself and just do research for yourself. What are the truth claims that were made by the people and the Jesus? And look for yourself what is true. I would basically say that, summarize that, look for the truth, seek the truth.
Be an intelligent skeptic.
Yeah, be an intelligent skeptic. And if you have any questions, any queries,
Drop
any
it down.
doubts regarding this whole episode or anything, please write it down in comments. We'll be more than happy to reply you. We'll be more than happy to do research for you and present some evidences that you are struggling to find. And thank you for watching. Thank you for all the viewers and all the people who have subscribed already, and all the people who are going to subscribe. Thank you in advance.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. See you again in another episode. This is bye from Akash and
Justin.
And Charles.
Charles.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you so much.